As an agency, you got so much responsibility, you got so many people to look after. You can't afford to be a Prahlad Kakkar and turn and say, up yours, and walk out. Agencies are willing to compromise and sell their mothers.
Is advertising fundamentally an idea or execution? Which is the horse and which is the carriage? I think there's a lot of confusion these days.
No, it's both. But today what is happening is, because of technology and because of such a lot of assets that we managed to get because we could afford them, because advertising has grown so much in India especially, that we can afford all the high-end machines to do real-time, what you call graphics, we can do 3D stuff, we can build dinosaurs, we can do whatever you see in the features. But the fact is that if there is no content, if there is no idea, if there is no story, then all your technology is useless, because it is only good when it's original. The next film comes and it has better technology than you, then people forget who you are and go after that one. And that also temporarily. So technology doesn't touch your heart. It only touches your mind. And that also rationally, and say, oh wow, what special effects. The special effects don't make a communication. The communication is in the heart. You have to live inside somebody's heart. So if you can touch a whole lot of people out there who are lonely, who need some friends, who need this, you have a brand which touches you. The brand becomes your friend, becomes your family.
This debate over emotional advertising and rational advertising, I'm sure you're for emotional advertising.
No, there's no such thing as rational advertising.
There's no such thing?
It's rubbish. It's just people trying to be safe. See, emotional advertising has a risk in execution because you don't cast it right. If you don't get the right sur, like when you have a Tivra Madhyam, or you have when you sing a song and you go off note and your sur is wrong, everybody says, oh, this is irritating. So when you don't sing, when you only speak, okay, then they can't say this is rubbish. You can say, yeah, he's making sense, but it's boring. But when you sing, if you hit the right note, then you're brilliant. If you hit the wrong note, you are put in the dustbin. So the risk of emotional advertising is, if you hit the wrong note, you are dejected, because you can never listen to a singer off key. If he's Besura, you can't listen to him. He has to be in sur, na? He has to be in key. So when you're rational, there is no key. So people listen to you and say, yeah, okay, carry on with their lives.
They'll forget it.
They'll forget. But if you sing in note and in sur, they'll remember the words, they'll remember the emotion, they'll remember the tune, they'll remember the fact that you have a sweet voice, whether you're male or a female or a child. They'll remember all these things.
Why do companies make rational advertising? To say their jobs and
of course,
to explain?
Because they're working for the company, na? They don't want to take a risk with their own personal jobs and careers. They don't want to be promoted out of turn. They want to be promoted in turn. So it's like being in a government office, Whether you work, whether you don't work, you're still there. 40 years later, you become manager.
A lot of great ads, the ads that we call great, are great only in hindsight, isn't it? A lot of great concepts do not see the light of the day.
Always in hindsight. So what happens in hindsight is the ad gets released somehow or another. Somebody fights, somebody makes a mistake, ad release okay? And then it becomes a huge success, like that Kalaveri Di.
Kalaveri,
Why the Kalaveri Di, that South Indian thing. It's become a huge success. Now all these suits are trying to figure out how they can take credit for it. And they can't. Because it's so spontaneous. You can see it's handheld, it's made in some stupid little studio, and it's just gone completely viral. All over the world, not just in India.
Yeah. I haven't watched it on Facebook.
Correct. Everybody is watching it. Now, nobody can understand why, because it's a rubbish nonsense song. Okay? So it's neither great music, nor it's great anything, but it's spontaneous, it touches you. You say, wow, look at these guys, they're having fun. They're having fun. That's most important. If advertising cannot pretend to have fun, then why would you watch it? The only reason why you would watch advertising is either because you're a pervert, okay, and into self-flagellation, or because somebody seems to be having fun. Say, oh, let's switch on the advertising, it's got better production value. Comedy shows, because the comedy shows are stupid. They're all besura. Okay? So the ads at least are funny but nice. So let's watch the ads.
I think you're one of the pioneers in flirting with humor in advertising.
Well,
these days everybody is making it. Why
when we started making humor, nobody liked it. Clients would get very bulgy. We had to fight so hard to be funny. I remember one of the earlier films that we made, the clients had come out, Gold Spot had changed the flavor because there was something in the flavoring agent which was supposed to be carcinogenic. So the FDA, that's the Food and Drug Administration, people banned that item. So they had to change that item. Now when they changed the item, they changed the taste because it wasn't the same flavor, the orange flavor that they put. The orange flavoring had the carcinogenic chemical in it. So because it's all artificial flavoring, so they had to change the flavoring. When they changed the flavoring, it changed the taste. Now, a lot of people didn't realize the taste has changed, but a lot of hardcore drinkers said, yeah, this is not the same, this is nutty, this is, spurious, whatever. So they had to run a campaign saying that we changed the taste. And so rather than saying that we changed the taste, they said, we have now given you new Gold Spot. So the campaign was, have you tasted new Gold Spot? So they had situations which were supposed to be funny. Before you graduate, in a graduation ceremony, the Vice Chancellor says, before you graduate, I want to ask you, have you tasted new Gold Spot? So they say, yeah or no. Says, the man is getting married and he's trying to lift the gungat. And she says, before you lift my gungat, tell me, have you tasted new Gold Spot? Now, these are situations which are very forced because they never came naturally. So when we were shooting the film, we got really put out. I knew they wouldn't work because they weren't funny. They were supposed to be funny, but they weren't funny, So we were in a canteen situation and there was something happening and everybody shouting and screaming. And one chap turned around and said, I want a limca. So I said, wait. I said, let's come here. Let's shoot this. So they said, this girl said, but this is a Gold Spot film, no? So I said, that's exactly what I want you to do. I want this chap to come out, this idiot to come out from the bottom of the table and say, can I have a limca? And you turn around and tell him, shut up, stupid, this is a Gold Spot film. Exactly like what you did just now. Says, don't ask for a limca, this is a Gold Spot film. So we shot that. What an argument there was with the client. He said, why have you put this? I said, because they're both your products. You can surrogate them. So he says, no, but why have you done this at the end of the film? The whole idea is that, have you tasted new Gold Spot? And all the situations, have you tasted new Gold Spot? At the end, the chap says, can I have a limca? And she says, shut up, stupid, it's a Gold Spot film. So I said, don't you think it's funny? He says, yeah, but it's different. So I said, so he was very unhappy. Finally, Mr. Kurian, everybody from the agency turned around and said, no, it's a good idea. Let it be. Let's run with it. So they very reluctantly ran with it. Do you know people still remember that line? 20 years later, 25 years later, they still remember the line, shut up, stupid, this is a Gold Spot film. And it wasn't even on TV. There was no TV at that time. There was only cinema, this thing. And that fool who came out from under the table became a hero. Everybody recognized him, they recognized him on the street, they recognized him at the railway station. It's these little things that make a difference. And if you don't allow them because you haven't thought of them, doesn't mean that you can't think of them on the set. All the Maggi sauces commercials were thought of, written on the set with rehearsals.
So how do you convince the clients or agencies when you've done it?
With Maggi sauces, they asked us to make 2 commercials. We made 6. And we gave them all the others, So they looked and said, these are much better than the 2 that we've written. I said, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Next time, let's not write them. Let's just sit and ad-lib.
Have you ever thought of, have you ever felt like throwing the script at a client's face or agency's face? Have you ever gone through that situation? When, the script is so bad that you don't want to execute it?
What do you call PNG? PNG, I walked out of a meeting because they were so anal. And every little thing, comma, they wanted to know what Bali is she wearing, what this is. I said, how does it make a difference? Is that going to give you a better film? No, we want to know. I said, okay, we'll tell you. But I'm not sitting in the meeting. One of my assistants will tell you. That's not my job. My job is to make your film. When I make your film, you decide. And I want to make it the way I'm seeing it, not the way you're seeing it. Because if you want to make the film, you make the film. Why have you got me involved? No, you. So actually, finally they decided, yeah, I don't think you should make the film. Because you are going to change everything and you are going to get us into trouble. So I said, I won't only get you into trouble, but I also get your foreign office to sit up and say, wow, who's made this film? Even that is possible.
What makes Prahlad Kakkar angry? Prahlad Kakkar को गुस्सा क्यों आता है?
I get angry when there is no detailing.
Detailing.
I get very angry. I get very angry because of the carelessness, the not caring about the detail. Because the difference between good and great is detail. And however much you might pay attention to detail, you can never be good enough. So everything, you get a great idea, you get a great cast, you get great everything. After that, what makes a difference is the detailing. To get down to this, on your knees, clean the floor.
Are you a passionate man or a stubborn man? I think people mistake your passion for stubbornness.
I'm very passionate. I'm very passionate about whatever I believe in. If I believe in it, I'm passionate.
So you're not as stubborn as the people believe.
No, I'm not stubborn. I can walk away from anything.
So you don't mind even losing the contract? You just feel.
Listen, guys, I mean, why are we going on and on? Because I don't see the film the way you're seeing it. And if I can't see the film, then I'm useless, I'm blind. The greatest ability of a filmmaker is to be able to see the film behind his eyes, not in front of his eyes. So if I'm not seeing this film, I'm blind. Would you like a blind guy to make a film?
You must have lost a lot of business.
Lots. Lots. But with no regrets.
Do you sometimes feel that you are the right man working with wrong people or working wrong point in the history of advertising?
No, I think there was a time and a place for me where I pioneered a lot of things like humor and fought many battles and established them, and now I'm okay. There are lots of kids now making better films. And what is nice is that we have a tradition that everybody who works with us for about 3 or 4, maximum 5 years, is then encouraged to set up his own company and become independent. And we help him set up the company, and we help him with his first couple of projects, recommend him to our clients, all that. So that they then have to compete with the parent company, which is us, because they don't compete with anybody else, they only compete with us. So if they are not as good as us, then they'll perish. So to survive, they have to be better than us, cheaper than us. Because why would somebody go for a new director who's as expensive as Prahlad Kakkar?
Cheaper, yes, but better, I think that's dark.
Cheaper? No, but then he has to prove he's better by making a really great, surprisingly great film, which means that he has to put in everything that I've taught him, which is follow your instinct. Don't worry about changing the script. Have the courage of your conviction. Do it. Just make a great film. Don't compromise that. So once they learn that, they're better than we are for that period. Then we have to look at them and say, I said, we have to compete with them. So we have to raise the bar. So everybody asks me, he says, they think I'm arrogant on this. They think Indian advertising in the last 15 years or 20 years has really gone international. And in terms of its content, in terms of its technology, in terms of its sophistication. I said, not all of it, but a lot of it. And there are a lot of very good directors now. In my days, there were only 3 or 4. So he says, what do you think that's the reason for? He said that the reason is because 60% of all the people making films are ex-Genesis. So they say, what rubbish? I said, find out. Take a census. 60% of the advertising world is ex-Genesis. So he says, so how does that make a difference? I said, because they have to compete with the mother parent company. And if we are the standard, they have to raise the standard. Then we have to raise the standard to be able to survive. It's a matter of, see, in our business, you are as good as your last film. Your reputation, your hundreds of films that you made don't matter nothing today. Your film is good, great, you're still surviving. Your film is shit, they'll chuck you out of the picture. They'll never come back to you. So, because there's so much competition, there's so many producers now. So I said, the bar is rising because there's competition.
So it's sort of virtuous circle, isn't it?
Yes.
You are producing them and they're competing with you, and you're raising your own bar.
And you constantly raise your bar. That's the whole business. That's why the business is so exciting. That you can't just sit on your ass and say, now I've done it. Now I'm a genius. Now I'm a guru. You can't do that. You know, all this is a big joke. We're ad guru and all. You know, if I start believing that, I'm screwed. I'll have to retire. If I'm going to still make ad films and make the ones that I want to make, I have to be fiercely competitive with my students, with ex-Genesis people.
Can a great ad film director like you turn an ordinary script into memorable ad? Is it possible?
It is possible. It is possible, but you have to fight. Sometimes when you get my age, then you think it's not worth fighting for. Because everybody's so suited, booted, and so stuck in their own groove, and so uptight that, you know.
The people often talk about creating top-of-the-mind advertising. Where do you think the brand should live? Top of the mind or bottom of the mind? Because when you say that I love you from the bottom of my heart, you know, isn't that what's supposed to be with the brands?
No, but you see, brands are, you have either long-term campaigns or short-term campaigns. Short-term campaigns are top of the mind. Long-term campaigns are bottom of the mind. So you have to decide how long, how much money, and how long before it incubates. And you build a brand over a period of time and don't be consistent. Problem with advertising today is that everybody's forgotten their lessons. They don't remember that a brand is not a product only. A brand is not just a bottle of water or a cup of tea or whatever. A brand is a person. And all of advertising goes in, the energy is going to creating that personality of the brand, so that you look at a brand as a friend, or as a family member, or as a child, or as a father, or as a mother, you know, because that is the persona that you have built into the brand. Now, every time the team changes, you start changing the persona. So today your father comes and says, I'm your papa. Tomorrow he turns around and says, I'm your lover. So you say, hello, Papa, have you lost the plot? Firstly, you're male, you're hairy, you're ugly. I'd much rather you be my papa than be my lover. If you're my lover, I'm not having anything to do with you. Right? So every time a brand manager changes, he thinks his personality should be in the brand, subconsciously. So how does he tailor the brand? He tailors the brand according to his own value system. I think this is right, I think that is wrong, I think that's where you should behave, this is honesty, that is not, you know, all this. So you want your brand to be honest, truthful, courageous, helpful, compassionate, okay, and beautiful.
Prahlad Kaka.
No.
I think you just explained yourself.
No, so that's how the team builds the quality of the brand. Okay? Now, everybody forgets that because it starts succeeding. Vibha Rishi changes and somebody else comes in. And they say, and they don't understand why Pepsi is working so well, because they think it's all about being funny. They don't realize it's about being anti-establishment and it's about being young. Only young people can be anti-establishment. Only young people can bunk classes, only young people can go and experiment with dope, only young people have rave parties, only young people experiment with relationships. Old people are stuck in a marriage, na? Where are you going to experiment? So suddenly, Dil Mange Moh becomes, what do they do, some rubbish lately? Youngistan Meri Jaan.
Youngistan.
When you call a young person young, you think it's a compliment to him? You think an 18-year-old kid wants to be a young? He wants to be 25 years old. He wants to be allowed to go to a bar and have a beer. He wants to be able to smoke a cigarette. He wants to be able to hang out with the chicks. You know, all that sort of thing. At 18, he's struggling to try and behave older than he is. So when you turn around and say, "Arey, Youngistan Meri Jaan," he'll look behind you and say, "You're talking to me?" When you tell a 50-year-old, "You're young," what does he do? He pulls in his stomach, stands like that, and he says, "Yeah, man, the way to go. 19 till I die." Okay? So who are you talking to? Are you talking to young people or are you talking to 50-year-olds? I mean, in one generation, you forgot why your brand is what it is. That it's funny because it's irreverent. It's irreverent because it's anti-establishment. It's anti-establishment because it's essentially young. And if you are essentially young, you're constantly challenging the status quo. You're not accepting the status quo. You're the guy who comes out onto the streets. You're the guy who follows Anna Hazare and wears his cap and says, "Me, Anna." You're the guy who wants to topple the government. You're the one guy who's trying to create a revolution. He's a 30-year-old, you think he's going to create a revolution? He's too bothered about his salary.
There's a lot of disconnect between advertising story and brand story. Isn't that so?
No, it's a disconnect because people don't realize that brands, real brands are people. That they have the qualities of human beings in them, which have been built over many years. And one day you throw the baby out with the bathwater because you decide to revamp the brand, as you call it. Biggest mistake that we always make, that we forget that brands have human qualities. And you can evolve a brand, you can change it. But a brand will grow up. You start with a young brand, then it becomes, 18, 19 years old, goes out on his first date, comes back, all that. But you have to carefully evolve within the character of the brand. No? You can't make a young, irreverent brand saying nothing official about it, I'm unofficial, to suddenly saying Youngistan Meri Jaan. What the hell is that? What does it mean? You're trying to tell young people you're young. Is that stupid? Is that so advertising? Is that so MBA? 2 and 2 is equal to 4.
You once said that, probably you have said it many times, clients get the ads they deserve.
Always.
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 So ads are simply the reflection. If the client is ugly, they will get ugly advertising.
No, the client is not open to accepting that you're a professional, just as he is, that his job is to market the product. Your job is to create the personality for it and the acceptance for it. If he starts interfering in your job and trying to create the brand himself, create the advertising himself, he uses an excuse. Every time you bring him a layout, he'll change everything around, make the logo bigger, make the girl smaller, change this, change that, do this. Finally, he looks at it and says, "Yes, this is correct." And it's a load of shit. So, because your client is paying your salary, you say, "Yes, sir, very good, brilliant." You release it. As an agency, you've got so much responsibility, you've got so many people to look after, you can't afford to be a Prahlad Kakkar and turn around and say, "Up yours," and walk out. There was an architect called Nari Gandhi. Brilliant, brilliant architect. He was probably the greatest architect India has ever seen. Okay, he was a student of that great American architect who that Fountainhead was based on. Okay. Anyway, he came back here. He was a simple man. He used to live in an Aguirre. He's a Parsi, slightly cuckoo. Everybody think he was slightly mad. And he built very few houses, but he built them himself, with 5 or 6 workers, the whole thing. And each was a piece of art. They were absolutely amazing. Asha Parekh, the actress, thought, "Oh, everybody's talking about him," so she said, "I will get him to build my house." So she commissioned him, and he said, "No, I don't think you and me agree on things." And she said, No, please, I'll not interfere. You please do everything." So he built her this house. Brilliant. Everybody should come to the house and be amazed. Asha Parekh one day saw one magazine, one fireplace with a mantelpiece. She said, "I want one fireplace with a mantelpiece." So he turned around and looked at her and says, "Why do you want a fireplace in Bombay? You don't even have a winter, I said, "No, it looks so nice. See, there's this grill and the fireplace, and it looks so quaint. It looks old, old-fashioned and nice and comfortable and homey." He said, "No, I'm not going to do the fireplace. You haven't explained to me why you want the fireplace. You want it for all the wrong reasons. I'm not doing it. Please don't do anything." So he had a key to a house. He used to have a key to all the houses that he had built. He could let himself in whenever he wanted. He just arrived suddenly, talking, sitting there in the room. So when he didn't come for some time, so they had a little fight actually, so he went off. And she got one mason and some other architect to come and say, I want a fireplace here in my drawing room. So he built her a fireplace. And there was this ugly, monstrous fireplace, and he let himself in and he was sitting there looking at this fireplace in shock. She walks in and says, oh, Nari, you've come back. He says, don't you like my beautiful fireplace? So he picked up Filmfare magazine, or Femina or something, whatever, with her photograph on the cover. She had this Asha Parekh photograph on the cover. He didn't say a word. He picked up this Femina, looked at it, took out a pencil from his, pocket, painted a moustache on her and gave it to her and walked out. Never came back. As an agency, you got so much responsibility, you got so many people to look after. You can't afford to be a Prahlad Thakur and turn and say, up yours, and walk out. Agencies are willing to compromise and sell their mothers.